My name is Captain Dana Whitmore. I'm 35, a Marine officer, and a single mom. I've seen enough chaos overseas to last a lifetime, but nothing ever prepares you for the landmines inside your own family. After 2 tours, I came back home determined to build a stable life for my daughter Sophie. She's 8, she's got more curiosity than fear, and she's the only reason I haven't lost my sanity through deployments, divorce, and everything in between. Sophie is the kind of kid who collects little details about the world. She sketches in her notebooks, braids, friendship bracelets, and treats every compliment about her long blonde hair like a medal of honor. She's been growing that hair since she was 4, and she's proud of it. People at school call her Rapunzel. She likes to flip it over her shoulder whenever she's excited. It's silly, but it's her thing. I divorced her dad, Grant, 5 years ago. He moved to Seattle for work, and while he's still in her life, it's more video calls than real weekends together. We're civil, but I wouldn't call us friends. Sophie misses him, but she's learned to live with it. That's the kind of resilience she has. Now, about the other side of my so-called family. My younger sister Tracy is 32, 3 years younger than me, and always convinced she's supposed to be better, prettier, more loved. Spoiler alert, she isn't. She's been jealous of me since high school. When I enlisted, she rolled her eyes. When I made captain, she called it a desperate career choice. When I had Sophie, she joked about how fast I'd ruined my body. She lost her marketing job at Brightwave Media last month after some shady expense scandal, though if you ask her, it's because the company didn't value her genius. Sure, Tracy, keep telling yourself that. Our mother, Martha, has been protecting her since birth. If Tracy set the kitchen on fire, Mom would say the stove was faulty. If Tracy stole clothes from my closet, Mom would ask why I was so stingy. My dad, Edward, is the opposite, quiet, passive, the kind of man who hides in his garage to avoid confrontation. He's not cruel, he just refuses to pick sides, which ends up being its own kind of betrayal. Every year, Martha hosts a big family barbecue at their house in Riverside. It's supposed to be a tradition, but let's be honest. It's mostly a show for her to brag about Tracy and the grandkids that aren't mine. She loves to remind everyone that Tracy's son Cole is so advanced in math, and her daughter Haley is a rising gymnast star. Ask her about Sophie, silence. Or worse, a backhanded comment like, "Oh, still drawing? That's cute." This year, Sophie begged me to go. She'd been working for days on friendship bracelets for her cousins, Cole and Haley. She even found a braid pattern in a magazine and begged me to try it on her hair the night before. We sat in the kitchen, her perched on a little purple stool, while I wrestled her hair into the design. She was glowing, staring at herself in the mirror like she was about to walk a red carpet. "Do you think Aunt Tracy will like it?" she asked, so innocently that I almost dropped the comb. I forced a smile. "I'm sure everyone will notice how beautiful you look. And remember what we talked about, if anyone does something that makes you uncomfortable, you come find me right away." She nodded like a soldier, taking orders. "Okay, Mommy, but I think it's going to be fun." Cole promised to show me his new treehouse. That's the thing about kids. They believe in people longer than they should. I wanted her to have that belief, but a voice inside me whispered otherwise. Tracy had ruined holidays before. Thanksgiving? She spilled cranberry sauce all over Sophie's dress. Christmas? She handed Cole and Haley expensive gaming systems and gave Sophie a dollar store coloring book. She called it a joke, but I knew better. The next morning, Sophie was bouncing around the house, her bracelets jingling in her backpack. She was so excited I didn't have the heart to say no. So I loaded us into the car, cranked up her favorite playlist, and let her sing the whole 45 minutes to Riverside. She was happy. For that moment, that was enough for me. When we pulled up to my parents' house, it looked the same as it always had. Colonial style, white siding, the old swing set in the backyard rusting away. Cars filled the driveway. A big banner stretched over the door. Family Gathering 2025. Martha never missed a chance to decorate. Dad was at the grill in the backyard, tongs in hand, gray hair sticking out from under his baseball cap. Sophie ran straight to him. "Grandpa," she squealed. He scooped her up like she was still 5 years old. "Look at you, Butterfly. Your mom did your hair?" Sophie twirled so he could see. It took a whole hour. Well worth it. You look like a princess." He gave me a side hug, warm, genuine, and for a second I remembered the dad I wished he had always been. Then Mom appeared from the kitchen with her usual forced smile. "Dana, you're late." "It's 12:15. You said noon." "Well, we start on time here." Tracy texted she and Derek are running late. He had a work call. Of course Tracy would be late to her own spotlight. I bit my tongue. Sophie was already in the yard playing tag with Cole and Haley, showing them the bracelets she'd made. My Aunt Patricia, Mom's sister, was there too. She's 60, divorced, no kids, and honestly the only sane one in the bunch. She hugged me tight and whispered, "Same circus, different year." That made me laugh, really laugh, for the first time that day. Inside, Martha had laid out her best platter of cheese and crackers like she was hosting a state dinner. She bragged about Cole's math scores, Haley's gymnastics medals, and somehow managed to avoid even looking at Sophie's braids. I was used to it, but every time, it stung. The hour passed in a blur of small talk and relatives pretending they cared about each other. At 1:30, the front door opened and in swept Tracy. Same as always, like the party hadn't started until she arrived. Designer jeans, expensive haircut, Derek trailing behind her with a bakery cake box that probably cost a week's groceries. "Juliet, oh, wait, sorry Dana," she said, fake laughing. "Cute dress, Target. Good to see you too, Tracy." Derek gave me a sheepish wave. He always looked like he regretted his life choices. Mom rushed to take the cake from him like it was the crown jewels. "From that French bakery downtown?" Tracy insisted. "Isn't she thoughtful?" "Yeah, thoughtful. About herself." I tried to ignore her, sipping lemonade, chatting with Patricia, watching Sophie run in from the yard, face flushed with excitement. "Mom, can I go upstairs? Cole says he has a new game." Before I could answer, Tracy cut in. "Oh yes, Cole's been dying to show everyone his new system. All the kids are going up. Right, Haley?" Her eyes lingered on Sophie's hair, and something flickered there. Sophie looked up at me, hopeful. "Is it okay, Mommy?" I hesitated. My gut told me no. My gut screamed no. But all around me were relatives watching, waiting to see if I'd be the overprotective killjoy again. "Sure, honey. Have fun." I watched her skip toward the stairs, bracelets jingling, braids swinging. Tracy's gaze locked on her like a hawk sizing up prey. And I swear, in that moment, something in me knew this was about to go very, very wrong. I set my glass down and forced myself to breathe slowly while I kept my eyes on the staircase. Sophie's laughter floated down from the second floor, mixed with the voices of Cole and Haley. For a moment, it sounded harmless. Kids being kids. I tried to relax, but that flicker in Tracy's eyes when she looked at Sophie's braids kept replaying in my head like a bad loop. In the backyard, relatives milled around the grill, plates piled high with ribs and potato salad. I made small talk with Patricia, who was sipping iced tea like it was whiskey, rolling her eyes every time Martha bragged about Tracy. "Cole's already doing pre-algebra," Martha announced proudly to a cousin I didn't even recognize. "And Haley placed second at the regional gymnastics competition. Judges say she's Olympic material." I didn't bother pointing out that Sophie had just won an art award at school because I knew Martha wouldn't care. My mind kept drifting upstairs. It was too quiet. For a house with 3 kids under 12 in one room, it should have sounded like a stampede. Patricia touched my arm. "Something's off," she whispered. "You feel it too?" She nodded. "She bought clippers yesterday. Said she was saving money cutting Derek's hair. Strange thing to brag about, don't you think?" I froze. "Clippers? Brand new. Saw them in her purse. Funny, right? She spends a fortune on a cake but suddenly cares about saving on haircuts." My stomach tightened. Sophie's braids, Tracy's flicker of jealousy, the silence upstairs. It started connecting in a way I didn't like. "Where are those kids?" I said a little too loudly. Martha appeared at my elbow. "Relax, they're fine, playing games, don't be so overprotective." She said it like a command, the same tone she'd used when I was 16 and Tracy had ruined my prom dress. "Don't be dramatic, Dana. You'll ruin the evening." I forced a nod, but my pulse was hammering. I walked to the bottom of the stairs, listening. Nothing but muffled game noises. I told myself not to jump to conclusions, but the itch under my skin said otherwise. When I turned, I saw Derek staring out the window, beer bottle in hand, avoiding eye contact with me like it burned. That was the tell. He knew. He damn well knew something was happening upstairs. I started up the stairs, each creak under my feet loud enough to make my chest tighten. Halfway up, I heard a faint sound, too soft for anyone else to notice. A sniffle. A whimper. Not laughter. Not excitement. I took the last few steps faster, my hand gripping the banister hard enough to hurt. The hallway was too quiet, doors closed. My old bedroom was empty. The guest room, too. Cole's voice drifted faintly from behind the closed door of his room, shouting at a video game. But that wasn't what stopped me. It was the sound from the bathroom. A soft, muffled sob. I stepped closer, pressing my palm to the door. Sophie? My voice came out sharper than I intended. There was a pause, then a small, broken voice. Go away. My chest constricted. Sweetheart, it's me. Open the door. I don't want you to see. She sobbed. The air behind me shifted. Tracy was leaning against the wall, phone in her hand, smile curling at the edges. She's fine, she said smoothly. Kids are dramatic. Something in my gut snapped tight like a rope. That look on her face wasn't just smug, it was satisfied. And that was the moment I knew something had gone terribly, irreversibly wrong. I shoved past Tracy and twisted the bathroom handle. Locked. My knuckles rapped against the wood, harder this time. Sophie, unlock the door right now. There was a shuffle inside, followed by another stifled sob. My pulse kicked up, heat rising in my ears. The voices from the bedroom down the hall, Cole and Haley yelling at their game, sounded distant, irrelevant. All I heard was my daughter's voice, breaking. Tracy leaned one shoulder against the wall, tapping her phone like she was checking notifications. Don't be so dramatic. She's probably crying because she lost a round of Mario Kart. Give me the key, I snapped. She widened her eyes innocently. What key? It's just kids. You're always making a scene, Dana. That's why nobody likes coming to these things. I pounded on the door again. Sophie, I'm counting to 3. My training kicked in, sharp and commanding. 1, 2. The click of the lock cut me off. The door creaked open a few inches, and Sophie's face peeked out, red eyes, cheeks streaked with tears. She clutched the towel around her shoulders like it was armor. Mommy, don't. Her voice cracked. My heart clenched. I pushed the door open wider. Then I saw it. The sink was covered in long strands of blonde hair, scattered across the counter like shredded rope. Clumps littered the floor. The towel slipped, and her braids were gone. Her scalp was patchy, bare in uneven strips. My breath caught in my throat, but not from surprise because I'd already feared it. Behind me, Tracy snorted. Oh, for God's sake, it's just hair. You act like she's dying. Sophie's bottom lip trembled as she whispered. She said it was funny. That. I spun on Tracy, my fists curling. You did this? She raised her phone, the red recording light blinking. Relax. Everyone needs a memory, right? Wait until you see how many likes this gets. A sharp surge of rage flooded me. I grabbed for the phone, but she jerked it back, laughing. Temper. Temper. What would the Corps say about their model officer losing it over a haircut? Sophie buried her face in my shirt. I held her tight, breathing through the fury pounding in my chest. Years of combat discipline kept me from lunging at Tracy right then, but only barely. From the bedroom, Cole called out, Mom, are we done? Haley's giggle followed. The realization hit Tracy had dragged them into it too. They weren't victims this time. They were accomplices, however unwilling. Delete it now. My voice was steel. Tracy shrugged, tucking the phone into her pocket. Already in the cloud. You can't touch it. Besides, everyone will think it's hilarious. Who cares? It's just a joke. The phrase was gasoline on fire. Sophie sobbed harder, her small body shaking in my arms. I stroked the back of her head, feeling the uneven buzz against my palm, every prick of bare skin stabbing me deeper than any wound I'd ever had in uniform. The commotion drew attention. Edward's footsteps creaked up the stairs, his face appearing in the hallway, pale and confused. What's going on up here? Before I could answer, Martha's voice carried up from below. Dana, stop yelling. You're upsetting everyone. Tracy flashed a sweet smile toward him. Nothing, Dad. Just Dana making mountains out of molehills, like always. I lifted Sophie into my arms. Look at her head and say that again. Edward's eyes fell on Sophie's scalp, his mouth opening, then shutting without words. His face crumpled, but before he could speak, Martha's apron appeared at the top of the stairs. One glance, one dismissive wave of her hand. Oh, come on, it's hair. It grows back. Don't ruin the whole day. Hair? My voice cracked like thunder. My daughter was assaulted. By your other daughter. Martha's tone was sharp as a knife. Watch your words, Dana. Don't you dare call it that. Sophie clung tighter, pressing her wet cheek into my shoulder. I turned back toward the bathroom, the mess of blonde clumps taunting me from the tiles. This wasn't some prank. This was humiliation, captured on camera, weaponized for Tracy's entertainment. Tracy smirked. You're overreacting. Everyone's laughing about it in the group chat already. I blinked. What group chat? She pulled her phone back out, waving it like a trophy. Family thread. Aunt Carol thinks it's hilarious. Even Uncle Jim said, classic Miller humor. See? You're the only one who doesn't get it. My chest burned. I'd face down insurgents with less bile rising in my throat. Give me the phone. Not a chance, she sang. You don't get to control everything. You left us for the military, remember? Some of us had to keep life interesting while you played soldier. The words sliced through the hallway. I tightened my grip on Sophie, who whimpered. Patricia appeared behind Edward, her face blanching at the sight of Sophie's shaved head. Jesus Christ, Tracy, she muttered. What the hell is wrong with you? For the first time, Tracy's smirk faltered. But only for a second. Martha clapped her hands together, trying to herd everyone back downstairs like nothing had happened. Enough drama. The food's getting cold. Dana, stop embarrassing us. I laughed, a bitter, humorless sound. Embarrassing you? Your granddaughter's been violated, and you're worried about ribs? The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. Tracy shifted her weight, pulling her phone close to her chest like a shield. Edward rubbed the back of his neck, muttering something I couldn't catch. Patricia crossed her arms, lips pressed tight. My hand shook with the effort of holding myself back. One step closer and I'd rip that phone from Tracy's hands, break it into pieces, and maybe her jaw with it. The only thing stopping me was Sophie's trembling breath against my collarbone. I turned, heading for the stairs with Sophie cradled against me. Every pair of eyes followed, judgmental or indifferent. Halfway down, Martha's voice chased me like a curse. You're pathetic, Dana. Always playing the victim. No wonder Sophie turned out the way she did. I froze. My grip on the banister tightened, wood groaning under my hand. Sophie whimpered, whispering, Don't listen, Mommy. I exhaled slowly, forced my feet to keep moving. Each step away from that bathroom felt heavier, louder, but I wasn't leaving yet. Not until I had every ounce of truth laid bare. Downstairs, the noise of the party had dulled. Conversations hushed as I carried Sophie into the living room. Her head rested against me, her patchy scalp plain for everyone to see. Gasps rippled through the crowd. And in that silence, Tracy's laughter rang out again, sharp and merciless, like a blade cutting through bone. Tracy's laugh sliced through the silence, and every muscle in my body went rigid. Sophie buried her face deeper into my shoulder, her small arms clinging to me like I was the last solid thing in a collapsing world. I wanted to tell her it was okay, but it wasn't. Nothing about this was okay. Tracy strutted down the stairs behind me, her phone still in hand. Oh, lighten up, everyone. It's just a prank. Don't tell me you've never laughed at a haircut fail video before. She waved the screen around like she was the host of a comedy show. Look at her face, it's gold. Patricia stormed past Edward, snatching at Tracy's arm. Are you insane? You shaved an 8-year-old's head while she begged you to stop. That's not a prank. That's cruelty. I'm matey. Tracy yanked her arm back and rolled her eyes. Oh, please. You're all acting like I killed someone. It's hair. She'll live. Maybe this will teach her not to be such a little princess. That word princess was like a trigger. Sophie stiffened, a muffled sob escaping her. I held her tighter and glared at Tracy. Don't you dare call her that again. You humiliated my daughter. You held her down. You stripped her of something that made her feel confident. And you think that's funny? Martha came sweeping in, arms out like she was trying to shoo a flock of pigeons. Enough already. Dana, you're making a fool of yourself. Do you really want the entire family gathering ruined over a haircut? The laughter bubbling from a few cousins in the corner turned my stomach. Their smirks told me everything this family was never going to protect Sophie. They were too busy protecting their own comfort. I pulled Sophie's towel tighter around her head and looked straight at Martha. Ruined? No, Mom. It was ruined the second your other daughter decided to assault mine and you decided to call it a prank. Gasps rattled through the room. Martha's jaw snapped shut, her cheeks blotchy. Tracy barked another laugh, but it was shakier this time. Assault? Oh, come on, soldier girl. Don't dramatize it just because you love throwing around big words. It's a haircut. If the Marines can buzz their heads without crying, so can Sophie. That did it. I shifted Sophie into Patricia's arms before anyone could react. Hold her, I told her aunt quietly, then turned and faced Tracy head-on. My hand cracked across her face before I even realized it had left my side. The sound echoed through the living room like a gunshot. Tracy stumbled, her phone clattering to the floor, and a ripple of shocked silence followed. Touch my daughter again, I said, voice steady and low. And I swear I'll make sure the only haircut you get is the one they give you in prison. Tracy's eyes widened, her cheek flaming red. For the first time that day, she looked rattled. She scooped up her phone, glaring at me. You're insane. Totally insane. Hitting me? In front of everyone? I'll press charges. Go ahead, I shot back. Press them. Because the video you're so proud of? That's evidence. It shows you shaving an 8-year-old's head while she screams. Assaulting a minor. I dare you to bring it into a courtroom. A murmur swept through the crowd, uneasy and divided. A few heads turned toward Tracy, and for once, she didn't have a comeback ready. She just hugged her phone to her chest, her mouth opening and closing like a fish gasping for air. Edward finally spoke, his voice trembling. Good God, Tracy. What have you done? Don't start, Martha snapped at him, whirling on me instead. How dare you strike your sister in my house? After everything we've done for you, you stand there and threaten her like some thug? Everything you've done for me? I laughed bitterly. What exactly would that be? Standing by while Tracy tormented me as a kid? Pretending not to notice every time she went too far? And now today you stand here defending her while your granddaughter hides under a towel, humiliated and terrified. The words tumbled out before I could stop them, sharper than any weapon I'd ever carried. Martha's face twisted, her lips curling as she spat. That girl has been nothing but a source of drama since the day you announced your pregnancy. We told you not to bring that bastard child into this family, and now look troubled just like I warned. The air sucked out of the room. My chest tightened as Sophie's head jerked up, her wide eyes searching mine. Mommy, what does that mean? She whispered. I swallowed hard, fighting the wave of rage threatening to explode. It means nothing, I told her, kissing the top of her bare scalp. Grandma's wrong, always has been. Patricia's hand clamped onto Martha's arm. How dare you? She hissed. That's your granddaughter. But Martha wasn't finished. You think I don't know? Kevin questioned it himself. He barely wanted to be around after Sophie was born. Everyone knew it. That was the knife to the gut. Kevin had never questioned Sophie's paternity, never. Our divorce had nothing to do with that. But the fact that Martha was willing to throw it out like poison in front of everyone, especially Sophie, told me there was no line she wouldn't cross. I straightened, my voice cold. You've made your choice, Mom. You chose to defend cruelty and lies instead of protecting a child. You're no family of mine, and you sure as hell aren't family to Sophie. Gasps rippled again, louder this time, as I grabbed Sophie back from Patricia. She clung to me, her small body trembling. I marched toward the front door, every eye glued to us. Tracy's voice called after me, shrill and mocking. Run away, Dana, just like always. Hide behind your Marine uniform and your precious little brat. But everyone knows the truth, now you're nothing without your fake honor. I stopped at the door, turned, and met her eyes. For the first time, I saw the truth behind her smirk. Jealousy, bitterness. The gnawing emptiness of someone who'd spent her whole life tearing others down because she could never build herself up. You're right about one thing, Tracy, I said quietly, my words cutting sharper than any scream. Everyone does know the truth now. About you. Her face paled, and the room erupted in whispers. I yanked the door open, the cool air rushing in like freedom. Sophie's arms tightened around my neck, her head pressed against me as if she never wanted to let go. And I carried her out of that house without looking back. Sophie's grip around my neck never loosened as I carried her straight to the car, her towel slipping but her arms clutching tighter, desperate not to let go. Patricia hurried behind us, shoving Sophie's backpack into the passenger seat. "Here, I'll text you later, Dana," she whispered, her face pale with anger and shame. I nodded, unable to speak, my throat tight with fury. Martha's voice shrieked from the porch, but I slammed the car door before her words could poison us any further. The engine roared to life, and with one last glance at the house I'd once called home, I drove off. Sophie sat curled up, knees pulled to her chest, the towel clutched around her head like a shield. Her eyes were red, swollen, darting nervously every time I slowed at a stoplight. I reached across and squeezed her hand. "You're safe now, baby. Nobody's ever going to touch you again." She nodded weakly, then whispered, "Why did they laugh, Mommy? Why didn't Grandpa stop them?" The question cut deeper than anything Tracy had said. "Because sometimes grown-ups are cowards," I answered quietly, choosing honesty over comfort. "But that doesn't make what happened your fault." Her lip quivered, but she didn't cry again. She just stared out the window as we pulled into our driveway, our little house with the chipped shutters suddenly feeling like a fortress compared to the nightmare we'd left behind. Inside, Sophie went straight to the couch, curling up with her stuffed rabbit. I pulled out my phone with shaking hands and dialed the one person I trusted to steer me through this mess. "Captain Whitmore?" a familiar voice answered. "It's Dana," I said, my throat tight. "I need help. Legal help." It was Mark Donovan, an old friend from my time stationed in San Diego, now a JAG lawyer. He listened as I poured out the entire story, from Tracy's clippers to the video, to my mother's poisonous words. His response was immediate. "That's assault, Dana. Plain and simple. Assault on a minor, caught on video. You need to file a police report tonight. I'll guide you through the restraining order paperwork in the morning." The words, restraining order, hit me like a lifeline. I don't ever want her near Sophie again. "And she won't be," Mark said firmly. "But I need you to document everything. Photos of Sophie's head. Screenshots of that video if you can get them. Write down every detail while it's fresh." "That's..." I glanced at Sophie, huddled with her rabbit, fragile but strong in ways no child should have to be. "I'll do it," I promised. After hanging up, I crouched beside her with the gentlest voice I could manage. "Sweetheart, I need to take some pictures of your hair. For the police. Not to show anyone else. Just so they understand what happened. Is that okay?" She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "If it helps make Aunt Tracy go away. Now." I swallowed hard and snapped the photos, each click of the camera shutter a reminder of the battle I was about to fight, not overseas but here, in my own family. Later, as I tucked Sophie into bed, she whispered through the dark, "Do we still have to see them again? Grandma? Aunt Tracy?" I sat on the edge of her bed, brushing a hand over her nearly bare scalp. "No, we don't have to see anyone who hurts us. Family is supposed to love you, protect you. If they don't, then they're not really family." Her eyes welled, but she seemed to accept it. She curled closer to her rabbit and finally drifted into an uneasy sleep. Downstairs, I sat at the kitchen table, notebook open, writing everything, every cruel word, every detail of Tracy's smirk, every second of Sophie's terror. My hand cramped, but I forced myself to keep going. The Corps had taught me discipline, and tonight that discipline was the only thing keeping my rage from exploding. When I finally put the pen down, I opened my laptop. Messages flooded my phone screen, Martha demanding I be reasonable, Tracy mocking me in the family chat, relatives sending half-hearted, "Don't blow this out of proportion" notes. I ignored everyone. Instead, I opened the cloud drive Tracy had once bragged about using, and there it was, the video, 10 minutes long. Sophie sobbing, struggling as Cole and Haley pinned her arms while Tracy buzzed away her hair, laughing the entire time. My stomach lurched, bile rising. Watching my daughter scream while others laughed was worse than anything I'd seen in combat zones. I downloaded it, saved it on 3 different drives, and emailed a copy to Mark. By midnight, the decision was made. Tomorrow morning, I was filing the report. The next day, I walked into the police station with Sophie's hand in mine. Her head was wrapped in a soft pink scarf, her eyes wary but steady. I introduced myself, explained the assault, showed the photos and the video. The officer's jaw tightened as he watched. "We'll take it from here, ma'am," he said grimly. "No child should ever go through this." Sophie squeezed my hand, and for the first time since the nightmare began, I saw a flicker of relief in her eyes. Back at home, I brewed coffee. I didn't even taste and opened my laptop again. Mark had already sent over the restraining order paperwork. I filled in every line, every detail, my hands steady now. The phone buzzed. A message from Edward. "I'm sorry, Dana. I should have stopped it. I was weak. I want to make it right." I stared at the words for a long time, unsure if they were cowardice or genuine regret. Then I set the phone down without replying. This wasn't about him. It was about Sophie. By evening, the video had started spreading beyond the family chat. Someone, probably one of the cousins, had posted it online. Comments poured in, condemning Tracy, demanding accountability. My phone lit up nonstop with notifications, but I muted them. Sophie sat on the couch, sketching quietly in her notebook, her scarf slipping back to reveal the uneven stubble beneath. I kissed her head gently. "You're the bravest girl I know." She looked up at me, eyes shining. "Do you promise we'll be okay?" I didn't hesitate. "We'll be more than okay. We're going to make sure no one ever hurts you like this again." End of forwarding. She smiled faintly, the first real smile I'd seen in days, and leaned against me. And in that moment, I knew there was no turning back. The pink scarf slipped off Sophie's head as she dozed against me on the couch, her sketchbook sliding into her lap. I adjusted it gently and tucked a blanket around her. For a moment, I just sat there watching her breathe, steady and soft, like the chaos hadn't touched her. But then I looked at the faint shadows under her eyes and the small twitch in her hands when she stirred, and I knew the truth. This had left a mark no parent ever wanted to see. I stood up quietly and stepped into the kitchen, grabbing my phone from the counter. My thumb hovered over my contacts before I tapped the name I hadn't called in months. Grant answered on the third ring. His voice was tired but alert. "Dana?" "Yeah," I said, my voice low. "It's about Sophie. I need you here." "IMACers." The pause on his end stretched long enough to make me think he'd hung up. Then, "I'll book the first flight. What happened?" I swallowed hard. "Your sister-in-law decided to give our daughter a haircut with clippers, against her will." Recorded it. Silence, then a sharp inhale. "You're kidding." "I wish I was." His tone hardened. "Text me the details. I'll be there tomorrow." When I hung up, a flicker of relief cut through the rage still buzzing in my chest. Grant wasn't perfect, hell. Our marriage had collapsed under the weight of distance and my deployments, but he loved Sophie. And right now, she needed every ounce of support she could get. I poured myself a glass of water, staring at the condensation dripping down the side. My reflection in the window looked like a stranger. Hair pulled back in a messy bun, uniform t-shirt wrinkled, dark circles under my eyes. I'd seen Marines walk into firefights with more composure than I felt in that moment. But this wasn't about me. The next morning, I drove Sophie to see Dr. Harris, a child psychologist I'd worked with after my last deployment. She greeted Sophie with a warm smile and a colorful office full of stuffed animals. Sophie clutched my hand as we sat down. Dr. Harris crouched to Sophie's level. "I heard you've had a really hard few days. Want to tell me about it?" Sophie shook her head, her eyes darting toward me. "That's okay," Dr. Harris said gently. "You don't have to talk until you're ready. Do you like to draw?" Sophie nodded. Dr. Harris slid a box of markers across the table. "How about you show me how you're feeling with pictures?" As Sophie began sketching, I sat back, tension in every bone. "Doctor." Harris leaned toward me and whispered, "She's showing signs of acute stress. Nightmares, hypervigilance, maybe some shame. The important thing is she feels safe and knows this wasn't her fault." I nodded, swallowing hard. "I told her that. I'll keep telling her." "You're doing the right things," Dr. Harris said softly. "Keep routines normal. Be consistent. And make sure you take care of yourself, too. Kids pick up on our stress." I almost laughed at the irony. Self-care wasn't exactly in the Marine handbook. But for Sophie, I'd figure it out. Back home, I found Sophie curled up with her rabbit again, scarf back in place. I sat beside her. "Sweetheart, Remember how Mommy wears a uniform to protect people? She looked up and nodded. Well, my biggest job isn't out there. It's here, protecting you. And I swear on everything I am, no one is ever going to hurt you like that again. Her small fingers squeezed mine. Promise? I leaned down and kissed her forehead. Promise. By late afternoon, Grant knocked on the door. Sophie's eyes lit up when she saw him, and for the first time in days, she ran into someone's arms without hesitation. He held her tight, his jaw clenched as he glanced over her head at me. When Sophie went to her room to grab a toy, he turned back, his voice low. I saw the video. Dana, I don't even have words. Neither did I admitted. So I filed the police report. Mark's working on the restraining order. Tracy's going to pay for this. He nodded firmly. Good. Because if you hadn't, I would've. For a while, we just sat in silence, listening to Sophie hum softly in her room. Then he said, Look, I know things didn't work between us, but Sophie's all that matters now. I'll do whatever it takes to back you up. I studied his face, the same one I'd once loved, now lined with guilt and determination. That's all I need, I said simply. That night, after Sophie was asleep, I opened my laptop and began drafting a statement for the school. Kids could be cruel, and I wasn't about to send her back into that environment without preparation. I wrote about respecting boundaries, about bullying, about how physical humiliation wasn't a joke. It wasn't polished, but it was a start. The Corps had taught me plenty of things: how to survive, how to lead, how to fight. But nothing compared to this. Protecting Sophie wasn't just instinct, it was mission critical. I glanced into her room, where she slept soundly for the first time in days, Rabbit tucked under her arm. My chest tightened, not from fear this time, but from a fierce clarity. I'd been trained to fight wars overseas. Now, I was going to fight one at home, and I would win. Grant sat across from me at the kitchen table the next morning, his coffee untouched, his eyes on the stack of papers spread out in front of us. Police report copies, the restraining order forms, printed screenshots of the video Tracy had proudly shared before it escaped her control. My stomach churned just looking at them. These weren't just documents, they were proof of how far my own family had fallen. We're doing the right thing, Grant said quietly, reading my face. Even if it's ugly. I nodded. It's not just about Sophie. It's about setting the line. Nobody gets to hurt her. Not even family. The knock at the door made Sophie stiffen in the living room. She peeked around the corner, scarf snug around her head, eyes wide. Mom? It's okay, I said, standing. Probably Mark. And it was. Mark Donovan, in his sharp suit, military posture still ingrained in his stride. He shook my hand firmly before setting down his briefcase. Captain Whitmore, I wish we were meeting under better circumstances. Me too, I admitted, motioning for him to sit. Sophie hovered close, curiosity outweighing her shyness. Mark crouched slightly to greet her, his voice soft. You must be Sophie. I'm a friend of your mom's. I'm here to help. She gave him the faintest nod before disappearing back into her room. Mark opened his briefcase and pulled out a folder. The police already have the video. That's gold in terms of evidence. But we'll strengthen the case with sworn statements. Dana, yours is most important. Grant, you can testify to her emotional state afterward and the ongoing impact. Grant leaned forward. What about the kids who held her down? Cole and Haley? Mark's jaw tightened. They're minors. Ultimately, Tracy directed it. She's responsible, but we'll include their involvement in the statement. It shows premeditation, not a spontaneous act. I clenched my fists under the table. She bought the clippers days before, Patricia told me. This wasn't spur of the moment. It was planned. Exactly, Mark said, making notes. And that strengthens the argument for malicious intent. The word malicious echoed in my head like a gunshot. That's what it was, pure malice. Mark continued, Now, the restraining order. Given the video and Sophie's age, a judge will almost certainly grant it. We'll also file for a no-contact order for online harassment, since Tracy circulated the video. Grant let out a low whistle. She's going to lose it when she realizes this isn't just a family squabble anymore. I met his eyes. She already lost the moment she touched Sophie. The paperwork took hours. Every line forced me to relive the bathroom scene, the clumps of hair, Sophie's sobs. But every word also built the case, a shield around her. When we finished, I felt drained, but steady. That afternoon, Edward called. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something in me wanted to hear his voice. "Dana," he said, weariness heavy in every syllable. "I know you don't want to hear from me, but I need to say I'm sorry." I didn't speak. "I should have stopped it," he continued. "I saw the signs. I heard her crying. I froze. I've done that my whole life, stood by while your mother defended Tracy. I thought staying quiet kept the peace, but all it did was let this fester. A lump rose in my throat. You stood there, Dad. You watched. You let her suffer." "I know," he whispered. "And I'll carry that. But I want you to know I gave a statement to the police today. I told them everything. About the Clippers, about Tracy's history. I can't undo what I didn't do, but I won't be silent anymore." For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, "If you mean that, then maybe one day Sophie will believe you. But it's not me you need to convince." When I hung up, Grant was watching me. "Think he's serious?" I shook my head slowly. "I don't know, but at least he's scared enough to realize silence won't save him anymore." By evening, the paperwork was filed. The police had the evidence. Now, it was about waiting for the court date. Sophie played quietly with her stuffed rabbit, but every so often, her hand drifted to the edge of her scarf, fingers brushing the short stubble underneath. Later, when I tucked her into bed, she asked softly, "What happens to Aunt Tracy now?" I sat down beside her. "That's up to the court, but she won't come near you again. That's what matters." Her brow furrowed. "Will she go to jail?" "Maybe," I admitted. "But whatever happens, it's because she made those choices, not you." She nodded, not fully reassured, but at least calmer. She curled into her blanket, and I stayed until her breathing evened out. Downstairs, my phone buzzed with messages from numbers I didn't recognize. Journalists. Somehow, the story had leaked, and now strangers wanted my comment on the Marine mom fighting back against her sister. I deleted them all. Sophie's privacy mattered more than headlines. Still, a part of me knew it was out there, spreading, the same way the video had. And maybe, just maybe, that wasn't entirely bad. Public outrage had a way of forcing accountability. As I closed the laptop and turned off the lights, I realized something. For the first time since that awful day, I wasn't just reacting. I was fighting back, on my terms. Not in combat gear, not overseas, but right here in my living room, pen and paper as my weapons. And I intended to win. Grant's phone buzzed before sunrise, and the groan he let out told me whatever it was wasn't good. He slid the screen across the table toward me while I poured coffee. A headline glared back. "Marine's daughter humiliated in family prank video goes viral." The pit in my stomach turned to stone. "Already?" "Already," he confirmed, rubbing his temples. "Someone leaked it outside the family chat. It's everywhere." I scrolled through comments attached to the repost. Thousands of them, flooding in every minute. Strangers condemning Tracy, calling her the aunt from hell, demanding charges. Mixed in were sick jokes from trolls, but the outrage far outweighed the cruelty. Sophie padded into the kitchen, scarf crooked on her head. She noticed the phone and froze. "Is that me?" I quickly locked the screen and knelt beside her. "Yes, sweetheart, but listen to me, it doesn't define you. People aren't laughing at you. They're angry at what she did." Her eyes filled with tears. But they all saw me crying. I hugged her tight. "That's not your shame to carry, it's hers. And everyone knows it." The doorbell rang mid-morning, and when I opened it, Martha stood there with Edward. She held a glossy gift bag, tissue paper spilling out the top. "Dana, we need to talk." I blocked the doorway. "Unless you came to apologize to Sophie, we don't." "We did," she insisted, thrusting the bag toward me. Inside was a blonde wig, expensive but cheap in meaning. "For Sophie, to make her feel normal again." "Normal?" My voice sharpened. "You think slapping a wig on her head fixes what happened?" Edward stepped forward, guilt carved into his features. "Dana, I gave my statement to the police. I told them Tracy planned it. I told them I failed to stop it, but your mother still thinks a wig makes up for trauma?" I cut in, glaring at her. Martha's mask slipped, her voice dropping. Do you have any idea what this is doing to your sister's life? She's losing jobs, she's getting harassed online, she's devastated. End pressing. The laugh that escaped me was sharp and bitter. Devastated? Tracy is reaping exactly what she sowed. My daughter's the one who was violated. My daughter's the one hiding under scarves. Edward muttered. She needs professional help. She needs consequences, I snapped. And she's finally getting them. I shoved the bag back into his hands. Take it. Sophie doesn't need pity gifts. She needs family who protect her. I shut the door before Martha could unleash another excuse. Later that day, Mark called. The DA is officially filing charges. Assault on a minor, unlawful restraint and distribution of harmful material. Tracy will be served within the week. I exhaled slowly. Good. Sophie deserves justice. She'll get it, Mark assured me. And Dana? Don't underestimate the viral side of this. Public outrage can push the system faster than it normally moves. He wasn't wrong. By evening, major news outlets had picked it up. Talk shows debated it. One headline read, Marine Mom Stands Against Family Bullying. Commentators praised me for filing charges when so many families brushed things under the rug. I never asked to be the face of anything, but if my fight for Sophie forced people to take child humiliation seriously, so be it. Grant scrolled through his phone, shaking his head. Tracy's Facebook is locked down. Every company she interviewed with has apparently pulled out. Even Derek, her own husband, posted that he's moved out. That one made me blink. He actually left her? Yep, he said, reading aloud. I can't be married to someone who would do that to a child. For the first time all week, a flicker of satisfaction cut through the exhaustion. Not because Derek leaving fixed anything, but because even someone in her closest circle finally stopped enabling her. Sophie sat nearby, coloring quietly. When she glanced up, she whispered, Does that mean Aunt Tracy won't come back? I leaned down, brushing her cheek. That's exactly what it means. Over the next few days, the storm grew. Reporters called nonstop. Some camped outside the house, hoping for a soundbite. I ignored them all, drawing the curtains and keeping Sophie away from windows. At school, the principal met me in her office. We're aware of what's happening, Captain Whitmore. We've already prepared staff to support Sophie, and we'll hold a class discussion about respect and consent before she returns. She will not be singled out. Relief washed over me. Thank you. She's terrified they'll laugh at her. They won't, the counselor promised. And if they do, we'll shut it down immediately. When I told Sophie that night, she nodded slowly. Maybe I can go back soon. But can I wear a scarf? Of course, I said. You can wear whatever makes you feel safe. The next morning, her best friend Paige showed up on our porch with her mom. Paige's hair had been buzzed down to a short crop. I wanted to match Sophie, she said brightly. Sophie's eyes went wide. She pulled off her scarf and touched her own head. We really match? Totally, Paige grinned, holding her hand out. Sophie took it, and for the first time since the bathroom, she smiled without forcing it. Watching them, my chest ached with pride and sorrow all at once. Kids understood loyalty better than most adults I knew. By the end of the week, Tracy's name was trending for all the wrong reasons. She was fired from her temp job, her applications blacklisted. She tried posting a statement online about a joke gone wrong, but the backlash only intensified. Comment sections tore it apart. Martha called again, her voice sharp. Are you happy now? You've destroyed your sister's life. No, I replied coolly. She destroyed it herself. Endo. When I hung up, I looked at Sophie sketching beside me, her scarf tossed aside. Her confidence wasn't back yet, but it was growing, and that was all the revenge I needed. The morning air smelled like rain as Sophie and I walked into her school, her pink scarf tied neatly around her head. She held my hand tight, though her chin was lifted higher than it had been in days. Inside the counselor's office, posters about kindness and respect lined the walls. The principal greeted us warmly, crouching to Sophie's level. We're so glad you're here today. Everyone knows about what happened, but we've already had a talk in class. You're not alone. Sophie's eyes darted to me, uncertain. I squeezed her shoulder. You don't have to be brave every second, just be you. When she finally stepped into the classroom, Paige was waiting, hair cropped short, grinning wide. Hey, twin, Sophie laughed. the sound so pure it made my chest ache. Kids gathered around her desk, curious but supportive. One little boy said, "Cool scarf," and Sophie's smile grew. I left the school with tears threatening, but they weren't just sadness anymore, they were hope. That afternoon, Dr. Harris met with us again. Sophie showed her drawings. One of herself with long hair, crying. One of herself with short hair, smiling next to Paige. "That's how I feel better," Sophie explained. Dr. Harris nodded gently. "That's called reclaiming your story. You're doing something very powerful, Sophie." I bit my lip hard, swallowing the pride that threatened to spill out. At home, we made changes too. We turned Sophie's room into a safe haven. Fairy lights around the window, a fresh coat of yellow paint, a bulletin board where she could pin drawings and positive notes. Grant even built her a small bookshelf, stocking it with her favorite adventure stories. Every night, Sophie chose one for us to read together. Sometimes she fell asleep halfway through, her rabbit tucked under her arm, the scarf slipping off. Each time I brushed her hairless scalp and whispered the same words. "You're safe, you're loved, you're strong." Meanwhile, the storm outside our little world kept growing. Tracy's name was still trending online, but Sophie's bravery was starting to take the spotlight. The school counselor emailed me saying Sophie had asked to give a small talk during Respect Week. I asked her about it at dinner, and she shrugged, cheeks pink. I want kids to know they can tell when someone hurts them, even if it's family. I nearly dropped my fork. "Sweetheart, that's incredible. You don't have to if it feels scary." "I'm not scared," she said simply. "Not anymore." That resolve carried her through. The day of her presentation, I sat in the back of the classroom as Sophie stood in front, scarf tied bright blue. Her voice wavered at first, but steadied as she said, "Even if someone is your aunt or uncle, they don't get to touch you or hurt you without your permission. And if they do, telling is not tattling. It's protecting yourself." The room of 8-year-olds nodded seriously, and a few even clapped when she finished. Paige high-fived her. My throat closed as I realized Sophie was transforming her pain into something bigger, something empowering. At home that evening, she asked, "Was that okay, Mommy?" "Okay," I laughed softly, pulling her into my arms. "You were incredible." Our little household began to feel lighter. Grant stayed in town longer than planned, cooking dinners and helping Sophie with homework. He even joined us for weekend walks at the park, letting Sophie ride her bike while we trailed behind. It wasn't the family we used to have, but it was working. Still, Martha's shadow lingered. She sent messages, long, guilt-laden texts about how I was tearing the family apart, how Tracy needed forgiveness. I ignored them, but each ping on my phone reminded me of the toxicity I'd finally escaped. One evening, Sophie caught me frowning at my phone. "Is that Grandma again?" she asked. "Yes," I admitted. She thought for a moment, then said quietly, "We don't need her if she's mean." Simple words, but truer than anything I'd ever heard. Meanwhile, Edward made Kia de Forts. He stopped by once a week, bringing small gifts, art supplies for Sophie, flowers for me. He never pushed, never asked for forgiveness outright, but he sat with Sophie, listened to her stories, and respected her boundaries. Slowly, she began to warm to him again, though cautious. I let it happen at her pace. One Saturday, he joined us at the park. Sophie showed him how fast she could ride without training wheels. He clapped, tears glinting in his eyes. "You're braver than I ever was," he told her. Later, he pulled me aside. "I failed you both, but I want to do better now. No excuses, no pretending, just better." I didn't answer right away, but I nodded. Actions mattered more than words, and at least he was trying. That night, Sophie curled against me on the couch, her short hair starting to grow in soft fuzz. "Mommy," she murmured, "I think I like it short. It feels me." I kissed the top of her head. "Then short it is." And Dufour. The core had drilled into me that battles are won inch by inch, not in sweeping victories. Healing was no different. Every smile Sophie gave, every scarf she wore proudly, every drawing she pinned on her board that was ground reclaimed. And as I tucked her in that night, I knew this was our new mission. Rebuilding, not just surviving. The courthouse smelled faintly of disinfectant and old wood polish, the kind of place where nerves clung to the walls. Sophie held my hand tightly, her small palm clammy. She wore her favorite blue scarf, the one Paige had picked out with her, and she kept tugging at the ends. "Do I have to go in there?" she whispered. "You don't have to speak, sweetheart," I assured her. "The judge has the video. That's enough. We're just here so they know we're taking this seriously." Grant sat beside us in the hallway, flipping through a folder of documents Mark had prepared. "It's pretty cut and dry," he murmured. "Tracy doesn't have much wiggle room." When Tracy finally appeared, flanked by her attorney, the hallway buzzed. She looked thinner, disheveled, and far less smug than she had that day in the bathroom. Still, when her eyes met mine, the old spark of defiance flashed. She muttered something to her lawyer, then smirked like this was still some twisted competition. Inside the courtroom, the clerk called the case. The DA laid out the charges: assault on a minor, unlawful restraint, and unlawful distribution of harmful material. The video played on a monitor at the front. Even though I'd seen it before, my stomach twisted as Sophie's cries filled the room. A murmur of disgust rippled through the gallery. Tracy's attorney stood, trying to spin it. "Your Honor, this was a family matter that got blown out of proportion. A poor attempt at humor ill-advised. Yes, but not malicious." The judge, an older woman with steel-gray hair and sharper eyes, cut him off. "Children being physically restrained and shaved while crying is not humor. It is assault." Her gavel tapped once, light but decisive. Tracy shifted uncomfortably, but her face didn't break. She leaned toward her lawyer, whispering furiously. Mark rose calmly. "Your Honor, the evidence is clear. This wasn't an accident. Miss Miller purchased clippers days before, involved 2 minors in restraining the victim, and recorded the act for distribution. This demonstrates planning, cruelty, and a complete disregard for the child's autonomy." The judge nodded slowly. "I agree." Then she turned to me. "Captain Whitmore, would you like to make a statement?" I stood, legs steady even as my chest tightened. "Yes, Your Honor. My daughter is 8 years old. She should have been safe with her family. Instead, she was humiliated, restrained, and traumatized by people she trusted. I served in the Marine Corps for 15 years, and I've seen cruelty overseas. I never thought I'd see it in my own family. Tracy didn't just cut hair, she cut trust. She cut safety. And she laughed while doing it." Sophie squeezed my hand as I sat back down. The judge looked directly at Tracy. "Do you have anything to say for yourself?" Tracy stood, crossing her arms. "It was a joke. Everyone's overreacting. Dana's just milking this to make herself look like a hero." The courtroom went silent. Even her own lawyer winced. The judge's expression hardened. "You show no remorse. That is troubling." She turned back to the clerk. "Sentence: 150 hours of community service, mandatory counseling, a $2,000 fine, and a restraining order. Miss Miller is prohibited from contacting the victim, directly or indirectly, for 3 years." Tracy's jaw dropped. 3 years? For a haircut? The gavel came down with a sharp crack. "For an assault," the judge corrected. I felt Sophie lean against me, her breath shaky but relieved. Grant exhaled too, his hand brushing my shoulder. It wasn't jail time, but it was accountability. For the first time, Tracy couldn't wriggle free with charm or excuses. As we filed out, Martha rushed up the steps, her voice shrill. "This is outrageous! Dana, how could you do this to your sister? You've destroyed her life." I turned slowly, holding Sophie close. "No, Mom. She destroyed her own life. I just refused to cover for her this time." Edward hovered behind Martha, his face tight. He didn't defend her, didn't speak at all. For once, silence was better than excuses. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed, microphones flashing. "Captain Whitmore, do you have a comment?" I shielded Sophie with my arm. "No comment," I said firmly. "Respect my daughter's privacy." "All." Mark ushered us past them, his voice low. "You handled that perfectly. Don't let them bait you." On the ride home, Sophie asked softly, "Does this mean I never have to see Aunt Tracy again?" "That's exactly what it means," I said, brushing her cheek. "She can't come near you. Not at school, not at home, nowhere." Her shoulders relaxed for the first time all day. She pulled off her scarf, letting the short fuzz of her hair show. "Good. I don't want her in my life." That night, after tucking her in, I stood on the porch with Grant. The air was cool, crickets chirping in the distance. He leaned against the railing, shaking his head. You know, Dana, I don't think Tracy even realizes what she's lost. Not just jobs, not just reputation. She's lost family. Real family. I sipped my coffee. She never cared about family, not the way Sophie defines it. Love, respect, protection. That's family. Grant nodded slowly. You're right. And Sophie's stronger because of you. I looked through the window, where Sophie slept peacefully, rabbit tucked under her arm. She's stronger because she chose not to let this break her. I just made sure she had the space to heal. Grant was quiet for a moment, then said, Well, you've got backup now. Whatever Sophie needs, whatever you need, I'm here. The weight in my chest eased. Just a little. For the first time in weeks, I let myself breathe deeply. Justice hadn't erased what happened, but it had drawn the line in stone. And I knew one thing with certainty. Sophie and I would never step back into that toxic circle again. Sophie stood at the front of her classroom, a stack of note cards trembling in her hands. She wasn't wearing a scarf this time. Her short new growth stuck out in uneven tufts, soft and defiant all at once. I sat in the back with the other parents, my heart pounding harder than it ever had in combat. She cleared her throat, eyes flicking to Paige in the front row. Paige smiled and gave her a tiny thumbs up. Sophie straightened her back. My name is Sophie Whitmore, she began, her voice just above a whisper, and I want to talk about bullying. Sometimes bullies are kids at school, but sometimes they're people in your family. The room hushed, even the fidgeting kids freezing. Sophie glanced down at her note cards, then set them aside, choosing to speak freely. Someone I trusted hurt me. They thought it was funny to shave my head. They told me it was just a joke, but it wasn't funny. It made me feel small. It made me feel like I didn't matter. Her voice caught, but she pushed through. But then my mom showed me that even if someone is family, if they hurt you, you can say no. You can tell people. You don't have to stay quiet. Even if people say you're overreacting, you're not. The teacher's eyes were glassy. A boy in the second row raised his hand. What did you do when it happened? Sophie hesitated, then answered. I cried. But crying doesn't mean you're weak. It means you know something is wrong. My mom always says Marines don't stay silent when something's wrong, so I didn't. The boy nodded. Thoughtful. Sophie ended with a shaky smile. Even if it's your aunt, or your uncle, or even your grandma, nobody has the right to hurt you. And you're not bad or broken if they do. You're still you. And you're enough. The applause started hesitantly, then swelled until it filled the room. Paige jumped to her feet and clapped like crazy. I pressed my hand over my mouth, pride flooding me so fast it almost hurt. Afterward, parents approached me quietly. One mother whispered, My son's been bullied for months. Hearing Sophie today, it gave him courage. Another father said, That kid of yours has more backbone than most adults I know. And day. When we got home, Sophie tossed her note cards on the counter. I didn't need those. I just wanted to tell the truth. I hugged her tight, blinking back tears. You did more than tell the truth. You gave other kids permission to be brave too. That evening, Edward stopped by with a small bouquet of daisies. Sophie accepted them with a shy smile and let him sit with her while she showed him her drawings. He listened intently, asking about each one, and when she handed him a sketch of herself with short hair, he said softly, That's the strongest girl I've ever seen. Later, after Sophie went to bed, Edward lingered on the porch. I can't undo what I didn't stop, he admitted, his voice thick. But I'm proud of her, and I'm proud of you. You stood your ground when the rest of us were cowards. I studied him, seeing the lines of regret carved deep. It's not about me, it's about her. She's the one teaching us all what strength really looks like. Martha, of course, stayed silent through all of this. No calls, no texts. It was as if Sophie's bravery threatened her narrative too much to acknowledge. Maybe that was for the best. Some people couldn't be saved from their own denial. Grant, meanwhile, kept his promise. He attended Sophie's presentation, cheered louder than anyone, and even took her out for ice cream afterward. Watching them together, I saw glimpses of the father she needed, the one who showed up, who listened, who didn't flinch when things got hard. One night, Sophie climbed into my lap with her sketchbook. She'd drawn herself in Marine fatigues, saluting. Next to her was a figure labeled Mom, standing tall in uniform. "I made us both soldiers," she said proudly. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "That's exactly right. We are both soldiers, and we fight for each other." She grinned. "Does that mean we win?" I kissed her forehead. "It means we don't quit." The weeks rolled on, and Sophie's hair grew in thicker, softer. She stopped wearing scarves altogether, walking into school with her head held high. Paige remained glued to her side, and the two of them became inseparable. Teachers told me Sophie had started standing up for other kids too, speaking out when someone was teased, inviting loners to sit at her lunch table. She wasn't just healing, she was leading. At the Respect Week assembly, the principal announced a new student-led initiative, Voices Matter, focusing on consent and anti-bullying. And at the center of it all was Sophie. As she walked onto the stage to accept a small award, the entire auditorium erupted in applause. She didn't shrink from it this time. She smiled, waved, and stood tall. Watching her, I felt something shift. This wasn't just revenge anymore. It wasn't about punishing Tracy or silencing Martha. It was about building something better out of the wreckage. Sophie was proof that cruelty didn't get the final word. When we got home that evening, Sophie curled on the couch, exhausted but glowing. She rested her head in my lap and whispered, "Mommy, I think I finally feel like me again." I stroked her short hair, tears spilling despite myself. "That's all I ever wanted, baby girl." And in that moment, I realized she hadn't just survived. She'd risen. The evening sun painted the living room in a soft golden glow as Sophie sat cross-legged on the rug, flipping through her sketchbook. Her short hair had grown into a neat pixie cut now, framing her face with a quiet confidence that hadn't been there weeks ago. She looked up at me suddenly, her eyes steady. "Mom, can I keep it short? I don't think I want long hair anymore." I smiled. "It's your hair, sweetheart. You get to decide. If short makes you feel strong, then short it is." "No." She grinned and bent back to her sketchbook, drawing a little cartoon of herself and Paige standing side by side, both with cropped hair, both smiling wide. Grant set 2 mugs of tea on the table and sank into the chair across from me. "She's tougher than either of us realized," he said softly. "She always was," I replied. "We just had to give her space to show it." Edward stopped by later that week with takeout. He didn't knock this time, just stood on the porch until Sophie spotted him through the window and waved. She let him in with a smile, the first genuine one she'd given him since everything happened. Over dinner, he listened more than he spoke, nodding as Sophie explained her school project on kindness. When she finished, he said, "You know, I'm still learning from you. I wish I'd had your courage when I was younger." Sophie shrugged. "It's easier when you have people who believe you." "How were?" The words hit him hard. I saw it in his eyes, but instead of retreating, he leaned in. "Then I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know I believe you." Martha, meanwhile, remained silent. Weeks passed without a call. No apology, no acknowledgement, just absence. And honestly, that was a relief. I had stopped expecting anything else from her long ago. One Saturday, I took Sophie to the park. She pedaled her bike fast, the wind catching in her short hair, laughter spilling out of her like it had before the nightmare. Grant jogged behind her, and I trailed with a water bottle. At one point, she skidded to a stop and shouted back, "Look, Mom, no hands." My heart jumped into my throat, but I laughed. "All right, daredevil. Just don't break your arm." She wobbled, caught herself, and came barreling back. "See? Strong like a Marine." I scooped her into a hug. "Stronger," I said. That night, after she was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, then began typing not for court, not for evidence, but for me, for Sophie. A declaration I wanted her to carry long after this was behind us. I wrote about honor, not the kind sewn on uniforms, but the kind that lives in protecting the vulnerable. About family, not the ones who share your blood, but the ones who stand by you when you're on the floor. And about revenge, not the shallow satisfaction of watching someone fall, but the deeper justice of watching the person they tried to break rise stronger. The next morning, I printed it out and tucked it into Sophie's sketchbook. When she found it, she read the first lines silently, then looked up at me. "You wrote this for me?" "Yes," I said. "For you. because I want you to know who you are. Not just my daughter, not just someone who went through something awful. You're proof that strength doesn't mean never crying. It means standing back up and saying, "You can't take me down." She hugged me so hard I thought my ribs might crack. "I'll keep it forever," she whispered. Life settled into a new rhythm. School projects, counseling appointments, dinners with Grant, quiet visits from Edward. The storm had passed, but its lessons lingered. Sophie's resilience was no longer just survival, it was leadership, shaping her into someone who could stand tall even in the harshest spotlight. One evening, we attended a community event on bullying prevention. I hadn't planned to speak, but when the organizer asked if anyone wanted to share, Sophie nudged me. "Go on, Mom, you're good at speeches." So I stood, hands steady, voice clear. I served in the Marine Corps for 15 years. I thought I knew what battles looked like. But the hardest one I've ever fought wasn't overseas. It was right here at home, when someone in my own family hurt my child. I want you all to understand something. Family is not the people who share your DNA. Family is the people who protect you, who respect you, who choose to stand beside you even when it's hard. And if someone calls themselves family but hurts you, you don't owe them silence. You owe yourself protection. The applause was warm, but the real reward was Sophie's face, proud, shining, unbroken. Later, as we walked to the car, she slipped her hand into mine. "Mommy, does that mean we're our own family now?" I looked down at her, at the girl who had been humiliated but not destroyed, who had taken cruelty and turned it into courage. "Yes," I said firmly. "We are our own family, and we're stronger than ever." She squeezed my hand. "Then we already won." I smiled through the sting in my eyes. "Yes, baby, we already won." And as we drove home under the quiet night sky, I knew this was the final word, not Tracy's laughter, not Martha's poison, not the court's judgment. The final word was ours. Because family is who protects you, not who hurts you. As I look back now, I don't measure victory by what happened to my sister, or by how the court ruled, or even by who stayed in our lives and who walked away. The real victory is in watching Sophie laugh again, seeing her walk into a room with her head held high, knowing she owns her story. That's the kind of revenge that matters. Not destroying someone else, but building something stronger for yourself and the people you love. And if anyone out there is listening who has been told to keep quiet for the sake of family peace, hear this. Your peace, your child's peace, is worth more than any toxic tradition. Protecting them isn't just your right, it's your honor.